Today I will be talking about my senior project on toxic workplaces. So a study in 2021 was done by Mustafa that found that 70% of US workers worked or currently work in a toxic workplace. 70% is way too high of a percentage or a statistic for us as business leaders to be acceptable of. We have to make changes within our organizations to prevent this from furthering or even increasing throughout the years. Well, how do we do this? Toxic workplaces have been around forever. We've never been able to exactly target what they are or how to change them. Well, there's three main ways that you can prevent them and in some places eliminate them from the organization. The first is a strict and effectively managed set of sexual harassment and assault policies. This seems fundamental and it seems basic or obvious, but in so many cases, businesses just say sexual assault, sexual harassment is bad, don't do it. And that is the extent of their policies. Or in some cases, they would rather, shove things under the rug and not look at them anymore or, not even investigate sexual harassment and assault cases. That can lead or is a toxic workplace. The next is to employ a diverse workforce. This has been known. Everyone has been preaching diversity since the beginning, and we all know that a diverse workforce is a more effective workforce. But there are far too many industries that focus just on the ethnicity without looking at the gender diversity as well. The last is to give employees and your workforce workplace freedoms. What I mean by this is to allow workers to work, fail, and succeed on their own. They will learn from their failures and they will learn from their successes. Give them that freedom to fail and the freedom to improve. Now that the world is recovering from a COVID-19 pandemic and all of these changes involving the pandemic are already in place, now is the perfect time to implement these changes as well. So what is a toxic workplace and how do we define it? Well, defining it is hard and as organizational leaders may be impossible, but we can start with a couple similarities. The first is that it is defined by the person. Every employee defines their own toxic or healthy workplace environment. For example, I may enjoy working by myself. However, my coworker may enjoy public speaking and being out in, open workplaces. Each one of those could be healthy or toxic depending on what kind of workplace environment they are put in. The next is that it decreases productivity and that it increases employee turnover in toxic workplaces. Both of those cost more money to the organization and are inevitably bad. And the last thing is that toxic workplaces can eventually lead to criminal lawsuits being filed against your organization. So obviously, we need to make changes to present this. So there's three pillars that make up your workplace. The first is your climate, the second is your culture, and the third is your environment. To start, I'm going to start by defining the environment. The environment's the simplest to design. It's the easiest thing is the color of the ceiling, the color of the walls, the way that you as an employee interact with your employer's workplace. The easiest way of saying this is saying, have bright colors on the wall and that'll improve your employee or your workplace environment. And yes, that is some of the case, but really it is how they interact with it. You need to cater your environment to your employees. And in some places, this is impossible. Healthcare professionals struggle with catering and having a healthcare environment that is also a positive workplace environment because there's so many different things that healthcare professionals have to have. Other companies can easily access this, such as Google. We will get into all of the different types of environment, how it affects later on. The next is the culture. Culture is what most people think of whenever they think of toxic workplaces. Toxic workplace culture. It seems like it goes hand in hand, but in all actuality, if the culture, the environment, and the climate are not all in balance, inevitably you will have a toxic workplace. So culture is the morals, the ethics, and the decisions that employees make within their workforce. You as an employer or as an organizational leader can affect this to an extent. But at the end of the day, it is their ethics and their morals that determine this. Cultures can be good and bad, obviously. For example, if everyone hates HR within your organization, that's great for everyone except for HR. It unites every single person within your employee and it gives them something to talk about within their culture. However, it may be toxic as an HR worker to have and feel like the rest of the workforce hates you. Another thing is that departments oftentimes form like cliques. So like this department won't talk to this department over here, or they don't interact well with each other. That also is part of your culture. The next thing is the climate. Now this, as an organizational leader, is your biggest input. Organizational climate is defined by the leaders themselves through the policies and the practices that you put out onto your employers or employees. So, a climate is defined such as if you're a profit-motivated organization, you may be stressing so much on the profit-based side of things that you forget that they're also people too. Or the exact opposite of that is that if your climate and you're in a monopoly situation where you have no competitors and you're not worried about the productivity as much, employees could feel as though their work is lazy or unproductive. Each of those could be toxic sides, and finding that happy middle ground is where we have to sit. So, moving on to the organizations reviewed. Throughout this study, I used 6 different actual corporations and then the military as well to evaluate organizational climate, culture, and environments. To start with Google. Stewart in 2021 did a study on Google's employee happiness and showed that 86% of employees enjoyed the environment and culture fostered at Google. This is amazing. That's an amazingly high percentage rate. 86%, you'll never make every single person happy. And like I said, you have to cater the culture and the environment around your employees. Google has managed to do that. They have managed to have bright colored walls within their environment. They have their employees working in swing sets instead of offices. They work in beanbag chairs instead of office chairs. Finding that exact mentality for your employees that they seem to think is happy or is healthy in their workplace environment is how Google has been so successful. They also use their environment to help their culture. Google's culture is amazing. They have a free-to-fail environment that employees are encouraged to learn from their mistakes rather than hide them and only focus on their positives. In fact, Google states that they would rather you learn from a mistake to improve than to only learn from your successes. This has allowed Google engineers and software engineers to find what works and what doesn't work, and find new ways to accomplish old tasks. Endelman and Eisman's study in 2020 showed that Google had one of the highest employee retention rates as well. This goes directly back to employee turnover, and when they only have a 19% of employee turnover rate comparable to industry standards of 30 and 40%, Google spends less time training new employees and allowing their current employees to prosper. Bark is the next company that is reviewed, and this company is another great example of healthy workplace environments that they build their culture off of as well. The simplest way of putting it is that Bark, the company behind most dog toys and the subscription service BarkBox, is focused on dogs. They allow all of their employees to bring their pets with them to work. This prevents stress from worrying about their dogs at home, and it allows them to test their products and their ideas directly on their coworker at paw. So, Bark's culture, on the other hand, is based around the same principles as Google's, the free to fail and the free ideas of keeping and maintaining the failures and using them to create future successes. Bark also has an amazing diversity role where they hire 2,000 to 4,000 new diversity and or underrepresented minority groups every single year. They aim to do that, and their strong diversity goals have allowed them to have new ideas and new toy ideas and new product ideas. They're constantly coming out with new products, and it's amazing to see as they skyrocket to the top of the pet toy market. So next up is Northwell Health, and Northwell Health is New York's largest healthcare provider with over 23 hospitals and 830 outpatient facilities. They were featured in 2021's investor reports and they were voted the second best company to work for in the Northeast and the 19th best in the US. Those accomplishments alone can show that their workplace environment, their workplace culture, and their workplace climate are healthy and that their employees enjoy it. The next is Activision Blizzard, well-known developer from Call of Duty, Candy Crush, World of Warcraft, and many other games. However, they have recently undergone multiple lawsuits involving their culture. They do not have a strong diversity that shows that their culture and their climate is completely off. Their environment and their culture and climate, fostered from their profit-driven and extremely productivity-driven policies that are in place, have drastically taken a downturn and have impacted each one of their employees in a negative way. So much to the point that they've had to pay over $160 million in this recent lawsuit due to their toxic culture. Tesla is the next company at hand, and they're obviously well known for their car manufacturing and engineering feats. However, they're being sued over a racist workplace culture as well, due to their underrepresented minority groups and their seemingly performance biased based group, with only a 1 to 4% of underrepresented minority groups being in upper level management. It seems obvious that Tesla does not promote underrepresented minority groups, and in turn, they do not have an equal, diverse, or ethnically diverse workplace environment. Intel is the next company. Intel is best known for their computer parts and components used throughout the world. Intel recently had a study done on them that showed that only 52% thought that the employee culture was toxic, while 28% preferred not to answer the study, leaving only 10% thinking that the environment was healthy. If only 10% of your employees think that your environment is a healthy culture, a healthy culture, environment, and climate, then there's something fundamentally wrong. And last is the military. The military is a completely different standard than most of these organizations because the culture that they foster is completely unique to themselves. They focus on the esprit de corps, or in layman's terms, just having the motivation to be there and do the job. A lot of things going along with the military culture are wrong, such as if you're failing, then you're doing something wrong. You're also very physically motivated, which ostracizes women that are biologically at a physical limitations in comparison to larger men. And the last thing is that they're not diverse. They may be ethically diverse with a lot of their different ethnicities going into the military. They are ethnically diverse. However, with most of the branches, with all of the branches being under 10% women, that is an impossibly low statistic to claim that you are diverse. So there's three main things now that we have looked at each one of these businesses that they can improve on. And the three main ways are an implementation of sexual harassment and effective policies that are equal in weight, meaning if you're saying that certain policies are zero tolerance and others aren't, that implies that those that aren't zero tolerance policies, you allow certain things to go. If you just instate and have a strict overall policy management system that each one is handled in an effective manner, then you don't need to have zero tolerance policies. The next thing is that preventative measures should be taken as well. Things such as command climate surveys or surveys of each one of your organizations to see how the employees feel and how they think that their successes or failures are doing. If you constantly are pulling from your employees and asking them, how do you feel like you did this week, or how do you feel like the office did this week, you will always have a better notion of what's going on the lower levels that you as a leader will hear last. The last thing is a diverse workforce. If you have that diverse workforce and you prevent it from ever creating biases within your organization, aka performance-based bias or other things like that, you will be better off as an organization. It also promotes different ideas. People from different diversity or different ethnic backgrounds will have different ideas that could be better or worse in some cases to the overall accomplishment of your mission or your goals. Those different ideas, though, even if they are worse, could eventually bring new ideas that are more productive in the future. The big one that everyone forgets about is gender diversity as well. In male-dominated workforces, they oftentimes ostracize women and throw those ideas out. Women also then will face performance-based bias due to the fact that they are surrounded by men and that they may not be promoted as fastly. The last thing is workplace freedoms. So workplace freedoms, like I mentioned, allow your employees to further the ideas that they have, and it allows them to learn from their mistakes. If you allow them to learn from their mistakes and create new ideas and paths on old tasks, you will automatically have a more productive workforce, and in turn, your employees will enjoy working there more often, and that'll help decrease your turnover. So in conclusion, toxic workplaces are made up of climate, culture, and environments. The three major changes that we as organizational leaders need to do are make changes to our sexual harassment and assault policies and ensure that they are strict and effectively managed. We need to have free workplaces and workplace freedoms for each one of our employees, and to have a diverse workforce that allows the free thinking and multiple different ethnicities, and to have a gender diverse workforce.